What's going on, YouTube? Ferocity here. Hope you guys are doing well. Yesterday was the 3-year anniversary of the official announcement of MW2. And looking back at it, I think we can safely say that MW2 is the biggest letdown in the entire Call of Duty franchise. All of the hype, all of the hope, all of the potential squandered, wasted, because of Infinity Ward's own ego, their own arrogance. And looking back at what could have been just leaves me disappointed. Because when MW2 was initially announced, people were excited. Wow, we're going to get the follow-up to MW 2019. Maybe they'll listen to the community and take all of those negative aspects of 2019 and improve upon them. They'll take what worked in MW 2019 and improve upon that. We might have one of the best games in Call of Duty history. But they didn't do that. They took what worked in MW 2019, made it worse. They took what didn't work in MW 2019 and doubled down on it. The one thing I will say about MW2 is the campaign is pretty darn good. Is it as good as MW 2019? No, but it's still pretty good. But that's where the positives end, for me at least. I look back at MW2, especially for the multiplayer, and it felt incomplete at launch, and it really just felt like Infinity Ward wanted to stick a middle finger to everybody in the community and say, F you guys, we're not listening to you, we're going to complete our vision regardless of how it's received. And don't forget that MW2 was also the introduction of everyone's favorite Call of Duty launcher, COD HQ. It seems everything they tried to do with this game was one giant misstep. And I didn't even mention Warzone 2.0 yet. It feels like everything they tried to do failed, missed the mark, didn't resonate with the community. But didn't have to be that way. It could have truly capitalized on all of the hope, all of the hype, all of the potential that players had for it. All they needed to do was listen to the community. Like I said, the campaign was pretty good. To make the multiplayer better, all they needed to do was realize their missteps in MW 2019. Make some better maps. Have some better movement. Maybe, just maybe, make Dead Silence a perk. Give players more information. That's all that we truly wanted. It felt like the biggest knocks on MW 2019 were the maps and the fact that it became a camper's haven. But of course, that's not what we got. With MW2, they seemed to double down on a lot of the aspects that didn't work in MW 2019. Dead Silence still wasn't a perk. Red dots didn't appear on the minimap. Heck, they made perks a timed system. Like, oh, you got this perk after this much time or XP or score or whatever it was. It was such a nonsensical system. Whoever came up with it, I really hope they're not still at the creative control of any decisions for Call of Duty, because that was a bad one. They made the movement more clunky. They gave every single weapon this weird muzzle flash. And to top it all off, things that worked in MW 2019, the grounded experience, the sounds, the graphics, all of that felt watered down in MW2. Felt like a worse version. How is that even possible? How did they downgrade from MW 2019 to MW2? But that's what it was. It was a downgrade. MW 2019 felt like a reboot, a return to formula, where MW2 felt like a soulless cash-in of a franchise that has worked in the past, but didn't have any of the character of what made it work before. That's why I look back on MW2 and I say, man, was this a letdown. But if we really want to dive into what made MW2 a letdown, we have to talk about Warzone 2.0. Because I remember what it was like when Warzone 2.0 was initially announced. People were jacked up. They kind of forgot about the fact that all of those cosmetics you bought for the last 3 years would be left behind. No, you won't be able to access them. Don't worry though. It's not that big of a deal. We promise we won't re-release the same cosmetics again. They kind of did, but that's neither here nor there. People were excited. New map, some new mechanics, all of it meant to create a better Warzone experience. And I've talked about Warzone 2.0 before. There's a reason why Verdansk is back. here in 2025, it's because it didn't work. They overplayed their hand. They thought that they knew what every player wanted. They thought they knew how to revolutionize Warzone, but they didn't. They forgot what made Warzone great. The fun factor. They sucked the fun out of Warzone with Warzone 2.0. Sure, it had some fun elements. I think the squad chat where you can hear your enemy chatting was a fun addition. But outside of that, from a gameplay perspective, from a map traversal perspective, all of it paled in comparison to Verdansk, to the initial Warzone. And that was a major problem. And then, of course, we have to talk about the content that we received throughout the year for MW2. Remember, the maps that we got at launch for multiplayer were terrible. Absolutely brutal. But don't worry, they would bring back fan-favorite maps like Shipment and Shoot House as seasonal content to say, hey guys, we're doing something. The first brand new map we received in MW2, I believe, was in February with Expo. Yeah. They had this weird thing with MW2 where they made every map name super long for no reason. And they kept doing it. But it was there's these two decent maps in Shoot House and Shipment, but even then, they've been overutilized at that point. And then the rest of the maps are insanely mid to bad. And you had all of the other problems that MW2 had. It just was a terrible experience. And like I said, it took them until February to drop a brand new map into the game. And it just really sucked any energy, any life out of that game. It was a massive problem. Not to mention the game still had network issues. It still had cheater problems. And frankly, it just wasn't what MW 2019 was. Players were clamoring, begging for changes, begging for them to right their wrongs. And they just never did. That's why when MW3 was announced, they focused on not being MW2 in a lot of ways. They're like, hey, you'll be able to slide cancel. Red dots will be on the minimap. We're going back to the classic perk system. All of these things you don't like about MW2, we're going to improve in MW3. That's exactly what they did. It felt like MW2 was just this year-long beta for MW3, which is really weird because, yeah, MW3's multiplayer experience is a more polished version of MW2, taking all of the feedback over the course of a year and actually implementing it. And in addition to that, they actually had new content right from the get-go. So as much as some people don't like MW3, and I get why, they at least tried. Sledgehammer Games tried to listen to the community, tried to implement the right changes to the game, and frankly just kind of morphed MW3 and MW2 together. Brought in a lot of the maps, had all of the same guns, and realistically was just a more polished version of MW2. A version of MW2 we probably could have had if Infinity Ward decided to ever listen to their community, which of course they didn't. So yeah, yesterday was the 3-year anniversary of that debacle. What could have been, man? What truly could have been? It could have been something similar to what we had in 2009, but instead, Infinity Ward's own ego got in the way and prevented that from happening. Instead, I believe they have helped set Call of Duty back several years because they need to have final say on everything. I think that Black Ops 6 is heavily influenced by Infinity Ward and by some of the decisions that are being made behind the scenes for Call of Duty's overall creative vision, which is handled by Infinity Ward. That's a problem. I do not need to keep playing Infinity Ward's terrible version of Call of Duty. Let me play what some of these other development studios have in store for us. Because what Infinity Ward has to sell us just ain't it. That's why I'm not going to be overly excited for MW4. It's Infinity Ward at the helm. All they care about is pushing their style of gameplay. All they care about is ignoring the community. All they care about is delivering us the most basic nonsense without any care or character. And that's a massive problem. So yeah, 3 years ago, they announced MW2. Here we are 3 years later with me telling you it is the biggest letdown in Call of Duty history. Simple as that. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in that comment section. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.